100 years. Okay, there's a little bit of dispute. If we look at what it says here in Genesis, verse 3, chapter 6, my spirit shall not abide with man forever, his days shall be 120 years. So that some interpret that as God ticking off how much time they have before he brings the flood, which means that's how long Noah built it. The other way is in verse 32 of chapter 5, it says Noah was 500 years old. Okay, and then it talks about this. When Noah stopped building the ark, let me see, where was that? Verse 6 of chapter 7, Noah was 600 years old when the flood waters came upon the earth. So if he started at 500 and ended at 600 when the flood began, how long did it take him to build the ark? 100 years. So there's some question as to which timetable are you looking at. So in either case, it was a long time. It was not something that he put together overnight. Okay? It was a long process. And what does that tell us? What do we learn from that?
That no one listened to him.
How many converts did Noah make while he was building the ark, however long it took?
None.
None. Except
His family.
his own family. Noah, Mrs. Noah, their 3 sons and their wives. 8 people altogether. That was it. No one else. Was everyone else welcome?
Yes.
Yeah. Why didn't they go in?
They were sinners.
They were wicked.
They were wicked, right? They were sinners. They thought he was a crazy old fool, building this huge boat in the middle of nowhere. Right? Who got the last laugh?
Noah.
Noah did, right? He got the last laugh. All them fools drowned. What this shows is that God is so patient. 100 years. Wanting them to repent. Wanting. And how many did? None. God is loving, God is merciful, but there is a limit to that. There is a time in which it says, all right, is that the way you want it? Is that the way you want it? Fine. And that's that. Okay? So that is part of why how long did Noah take to build the ark is important to the story. It shows that God is patient. And what relevance does this have to us? Because Jesus said this is what the conditions on the earth would be like when he came back again. Remember that? Matthew 25. I'm sorry, Matthew 24. Matthew 24, verse 36. But that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father only. As it was in the days of Noah, so will it be at the coming of the Son of Man. Did you hear that? For as in those days before the flood, they were eating, drinking, marrying, giving in marriage, until the day when Noah entered the ark. And then what?
They did not know until the
Flood came and swept them all away. So will be the coming of the Son of Man. Did you hear that?
Yes.
The second coming of Jesus is going to be very much like the times that Noah lived in. And one of the characteristics of that day and age is what? Wickedness.
And violence.
Violence and impenitence. People not repenting. No faith on the earth. No faith on the earth.
Wickedness, violence, and
impenitence. Okay? All right? So this is important. The study of the story of Noah tells us what the conditions of the earth was like before Noah went into the ark. And Jesus says, you want to know what it's going to be like before I come back? I'll tell you. It's going to be just like the days of Noah. What else did Jesus say his coming would be like? Well, keep reading. One will be taken, one will be left. Where is it? It's not in here? Yeah, it's Matthew. Oh, I bet it's in Luke. Let's go to Luke. Luke's Gospel. Luke's Gospel will have it. Luke 21. No, I guess not. Back to Matthew. Where is it? As it was in the days of Lot, so shall it be when the coming of the Son of Man. I'm sorry? 25?
Luke 21, verse 25, what he said.
Oh, Luke 21, 25?
Yeah.
21, 25.
And there will be sons in the sun and moon.
Where is the... What? I thought he put them together here. Why am I not seeing this? Somebody's changed my Bible.
Luke 17, what? Luke 17, 28 is Lot.
Luke 17.
In the days of Lot, they ate, they drank, they sowed, they planted, they built, but on the day when the fire and brimstone rained from heaven.
So, oh yes, all right. Yes, Luke 17 says, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be at the coming of the Son of Man. Luke 17, 26. Likewise, verse 28, likewise as it was in the days of Lot. They ate and drank and bought and sold and planted, they built. But on the day Lot went out of Sodom, fire and brimstone rained from heaven and destroyed them all. So will it be on the day when the Son of Man is revealed. So there are two stories in which Jesus talks about how his second coming is going to be characterized. One is in the days of Lot. One and the other is in the days of Noah. Both have similar characteristics. Both talk about violence, both talk about immorality, and both talk about lack of faith or impenitence. No one in the city of Sodom and Gomorrah left with Lot. Okay? And even his wife, when she left, looked back and as a result was judged. Okay? So, those are the characteristics, those are the main takeaways that Jesus is talking about when he's talking about what it was like when he comes back again. So the good news, my brothers and sisters, is as long as we see faith on the earth, as long as we see repentance on the earth, as long as we still see that there is this love for God still on the earth, we're not near the days as it was in the days of Lot and Noah. It's when it comes to the hard-heartedness of people to the point where there is no conversion and the level of violence and wickedness on the earth increases, that's when you need to start to worry. That's when you need to start to worry. Okay? So when the Holy Father goes to a country on a pilgrimage and hundreds and thousands of people try to flock into the Mass, okay, that to me is a sign of faith still on the earth. Things like that. If no one shows, then I would start to worry. Then that we're getting close to that time. But way before that, I think part of what's going to contribute to that would be the coming of the Antichrist. I think that that is in connection to this. He will be one to pull people away from the love of God by pulling attention to himself. Okay? But I don't want to get off on that. How big was the ark? 450 feet long by our measurements, roughly. 75 feet wide and 50 feet tall. Where do we get those ideas?
Conversion of units.
It's in the Bible, yes. Okay? The scriptures tell us that. If we look in Genesis chapter 6, it may be actually in chapter 7. No, it's in chapter 6, verse 11. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight, and the earth was filled with violence. And God saw that the earth was corrupt, and all the flesh had corrupted away before it. And God said to Noah, I have determined to make an end of all flesh, for the earth is filled with violence through them. Behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it in and out with pitch. This is how you're to make it. The length of the ark, 300 cubits. The breadth, 50 cubits. And the height, 30 cubits. When you translate cubits into feet in our modern, it would be roughly 450 by 75 by 50. It was a huge boat. But where do we get this idea? The scriptures tell us this. Okay? Now that's an important detail. Why, if this is just simply a moral lesson, did God put such a strange detail like this? Who cares how big it is? Okay? Which may indicate that there may be more to this story than meets the eye, is what I'm suggesting. That this is more than just a moral tale. I personally believe that this is describing a real event in real time. Well, it's not my personal belief. The belief in the flood as a real event, I think, is something we need to take as a real event in real time. The flood happened. Remember, our understanding and interpretation of the book of Genesis is we don't take it literalistically, but it does describe past events in a poetic manner. Okay? So we have to keep that into consideration. The detail that the flood story gives about the dimensions of the ark, I think, are pointing to the real element within the poetry. Okay? That's what I want to say. All right? And we'll get to the proof of that. How in the world did all the animals fit in the ark? Through one door, yes, it was through one door. And God provided for them while they were on there. The reason why we could say that all the world's animals were on there is that it was not every single type of dogs were on there, not every single type of horses, that the types and breeds of horses and dogs, for example, that we have are the result of mankind's breeding of them. That's why we have thoroughbreds. We also have Shetland ponies. We also have, just your ordinary plow horse and everything in between, Clydesdales and so forth. There's one type of horse, but it has been bred to serve different types of needs and niches in the world. Same thing with dogs. You have Great Danes, you have Chihuahuas, and you have everything in between. But I believe only one species of dog were on the ark that was needed in order to be bred to fill all the different niches and types that there were. So I think that that tells us something about how all the animals were able to go on board the ark. How did they care for them all? We kind of mentioned this. God provided. But I also think that the conditions on board the ark, many of the animals went into hibernation. Because how long were they on the ark?
Almost a year.
Over a year, yes. 371 days, I believe. If you
Yeah.
calculate the time that's in there, from the time that the rains began until they left the ark, it was 371 days total, according to the record in Genesis. Okay, again, an interesting detail. Why would you need to know that? Okay? There is something about this story that's ringing true. Something that rings true of a real event in real time. Did the flood cover the whole world, or was it merely a local thing?
Yes.
The whole world.
The whole world, okay? A couple of weeks ago, I showed you a video that indicates our geology from around the world seems to collaborate the idea of a global, universal flood. The deposits of fossils around the world seem to indicate that they were dumped, if you will, into locations. That huge dinosaurs were covered over with mud and rock and debris in a very quick manner. Okay? So this indicates that there was a global, universal flood. Okay? Now, these last two parts I want to get to with some videos before I run out of time. We talked about this about dinosaurs. How do the dinosaurs fit into the story of Noah? And what I wanted to show you is another video. People were wondering about it because I kept mentioning the idea of dinosaurs being on the ark and how they are the basis for dragon legends in world mythology. So I wanted to show you this. I'm not showing it to you all. It's actually an hour long. I'm going to show you about 25 minutes of it to give you an idea of where this comes from.